Hey everybody, a great beautiful June Saturday. Steve Casper in the studio with David Gall, Mr. Nutrition. Welcome to What About Nutrition, the show that explores the link between nutrition and optimum health and asks the overlooked question, what about nutrition? Every day there is more scientific evidence and research regarding the critical importance of nutrition for the promotion of optimum health. On What About Nutrition, we'll focus on a dietary supplement regimen, herbs, vitamins, and homeopathic remedies, what they are, what they do, and how to use them. We'll also discuss diet, exercise, and other aspects of living a healthy lifestyle in the 21st century. Your host is David Gall, sitting beside me, owner of O'Fallon Nutrition and a graduate of Washington University and Huntington College of Health Sciences Comprehensive Nutrition Program. Remember, always consult your healthcare practitioner before beginning any new supplements or other changes to your lifestyle. The purpose of this show is to inform, educate, and entertain, not to diagnose, treat, or prevent any disease. And so with us right now, we have David Gall, Mr. Nutrition, as I like to say.
Good morning, Steve.
Yeah, man. You know, I like I said before, we've only been running this show for about a month, and I am just so stoked about the information that is disseminated in the show. And you're such a great expert, and it's good to have a business in the Westplex like O'Fallon Nutrition, which is located on the west, it's right Veterans Memorial Parkway out by JJ's Restaurant.
Yep, just a few blocks west of K.
That's right. And it's great to have when you can go into that store and you can ask questions, and you have a very well-trained staff. And if you're not there, you've got people there that can answer any question.
That's right.
Excited about it. Well, what's on the agenda today for What About Nutrition?
Well, Steve, I thought today would be a great day to talk about the basics of building a supplement program.
Okay.
The show's called What About Nutrition, and we've talked about a few supplements along the way and some things, but we really haven't dove into this topic that deeply yet.
You're talking to Mr. Supplement Fanatic, and and I'm very well aware now you can overdo all this vitamins. Sometimes people get sick when they get too much, and you'll talk a little about that at some point in your show. But I'm one, I know I've been taking omega-3s before people even knew what it was. I think about 25 years, and I'm stocky and overweight, but my cardiologist says I got a great heart, and he said that a lot of that's because I've been taking the omega-3s in the right dosage, which I understand there's really no end to what you can take.
Yeah, actually, that's true in the case of something like omega-3 fatty acids. Technically, could somebody take too much? Yes. But,
they turn into a fish.
Right. Really, really large amounts to get to that point.
Yeah.
And long story short, with something like omega-3s, it's really a balance with other fats in your diet, and we're so deficient in them typically that it's really difficult to overdo it.
Yeah.
A lot of people take these oils by the tablespoon if they're really hardcore health nuts.
Yeah.
And to give you perspective, that's something like a dozen fish oil soft gels.
Oh my God.
That can still be within the realm of reason.
Really?
Not that I would advocate people taking a dozen soft gels.
Yeah. Well, it's good stuff, and I'll let you, I know you've got a really good show lined up for us here today. Folks, you're listening to What About Nutrition exclusively on Westplex News Talk 94.1 with David Gall of O'Fallon Nutrition.
All right, Steve. Well, so like I said, we're going to talk about how to build a supplement program. And this is something that a lot of people have questions about, or they've maybe not quite thought about it in this way before. So a lot of people take things like a multivitamin, but what we see in our store is that folks come in and sometimes they're not really sure where to begin. And so I think it's important to understand what the basics are, what constitutes a good foundation, and then the sky is the limit after that. So what are the basics of a good supplement program? In our store, with my philosophy, we consider the basics to be a multivitamin and mineral, an essential fatty acid supplement that includes the omega-3s, like Steve was just mentioning, some additional macro minerals. These are the bigger minerals in your body, like magnesium and calcium. And then there's a fourth component that I really think is essential in my philosophy, and that is probiotics. Those are the good bacteria or the beneficial microorganisms that live inside of your body, inside of your gut. So why these basics? Why do we say that these are the important ones? Well, most of these nutrients, with the exception of the probiotics, fall under the category of essential nutrients. And by essential, we mean that they're required to live. You can go a while without many of these, but nutrients like vitamin C, B complex vitamins, many of your minerals, etc. You cannot live without indefinitely. If you have a vitamin C deficiency, eventually you develop scurvy. And with scurvy, unfortunately, basically you die from bleeding to death internally.
Wow.
Not a big problem these days, but it was a big, big problem with sailors back in the day, and that's why the British Navy was known as limeys, because they were the first to bring limes along.
Now, they didn't even, for a long time, they didn't know what was ailing them, did they?
Oh, totally. It's really fun if you read, historical things on sailors and old navies, etc. This was a real big issue, whether they were whalers or in the Navy or etc. Scurvy would often develop among sailors while they were away at sea for months at a time.
Yeah.
They would develop weakness. First signs, their teeth would fall out, their gums would bleed, and of course they thought that maybe perhaps rum was the best remedy for this.
Oh my gosh.
Which didn't exactly help. But then the British discovered that if they brought some limes along, and I believe what they actually did is mixed it with their rum, and it prevented the scurvy.
Now, that's a cool idea.
Yeah, sure. It's probably one of the secrets.
And then when they discovered tequila, then they mixed the lime and voila, Margaritaville.
Right, all sorts of nutrients.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the basics of a supplement program. A lot of these nutrients are difficult to test for deficiency. That's another misconception that I hear a lot. I'm not going to get a lot into this, but it's not as if every one of these nutrients has a perfect test to see if you've got enough. The tests that we hear about for nutrients like minerals in our blood are actually just testing the minerals that are floating around in your blood plasma. They're not testing the levels of the minerals that are inside of your cells. So I don't, again, want to dive deeply in that, but it's not as if we have a variety of tests that you can just get at your local physician's office and find out exactly what vitamins you need. A lot of nutrients are missing from our diet, or they're in suboptimal amounts. The fact is that nobody eats a perfect diet. Our soil is depleted, and that's a fact. And then issues such as food storage decrease nutrients. And this is a big issue in modern life. When we buy groceries at the grocery store, they've been trucked in on a truck or flown in on a plane. Many of them are not even from the local area, which just in terms of nutrition means that they had to sit longer. And so the nutrients are a lot lower than they would have been if we were a hunter and gatherer 1,000 years ago and just picked it up and ate it. Can't get any fresher than that. Or if we were a farmer that grew it and then ate it the next day. So the food's sitting a long time, the soil is depleted, nobody eats a perfect diet. We also have the issue of coping with the added stress of modern life. We have environmental pollution, we have increased sugar and refined food, major factor. We consume dramatically more sugar and refined foods such as white flour than even 100 years ago. First white sugar was available basically in the 1500s. It was considered a drug in medieval Europe.
Really?
A refined white powder that produced weird cravings in people.
Do they sniff it? I'm sure they just ingested it.
They just ingested it, but they thought it was a drug because of its effects.
Wow.
We also have issues like less sleep and more stress. We have a different kind of stress. If we were cavemen, then the stress would have been every once in a while somebody would have been chasing us, a saber-toothed tiger, etc. We got to get away. And of course, we exercise when we got to get away, which reduces the stress hormones anyways. But now we have this chronic stress. We're dealing with modern life, phone calls, messages, etc.
Yeah.
So these things all actually have an effect on our requirement for nutrients. And we want to ensure an adequate intake of all those essential micronutrients. Recently, we talked about macronutrients like fat, protein, and carbs. Here we're talking about vitamins and minerals. Your fat-soluble vitamins like E, your water-soluble vitamins like your B's and C, and then all your minerals, your zinc, your selenium, your chromium. Now, a lot of folks believe that combining supplements with whole food improves resistance against infection, disease, and stress better than whole food alone. Nobody's saying you shouldn't eat a great diet. Nobody's saying that you shouldn't eat less refined food, that you should eat more vegetables. Those are all positive things. However, they don't necessarily make it that you don't require any other additional nutrients. So you can combine them, and that's the way that I think you're going to get the best result. And a lot of folks also believe that insufficient micronutrient intake is a common cause of fatigue, disordered eating like food cravings at night, increased susceptibility to sports injuries, physical weakness, poor workout recovery, and even the development and progression of degenerative disease and aging. I mean, on a basic level, proof of that would be deficiency diseases like scurvy and beriberi that you get if you have way too little of a nutrient over time. But they're also implicated in development of all sorts of other issues. Now, moving ahead, let's talk just briefly. Let's say you're somebody that works out, maybe, or you're an athlete. A lot of people don't necessarily consider themselves athletes, but in the world of nutrition, if you work out, you're an athlete. So, and what that means in terms of micronutrients and these supplements is that causes an increase in the excretion of many nutrients in the sweat and urine. A lot of people are totally unfamiliar with this. When we work out and we're sweating, we're actually sweating out some of our nutrients. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it does have an impact on our requirements. And more importantly, physical activity also increases the need for antioxidants. So when we exercise, we're producing energy, right, Steve?
Right.
Okay, so in our cells, they're making energy. It's just like a car that's producing energy in its motor. And cars produce exhaust, right?
Right.
They produce waste. Our cells produce cellular waste as a result of making energy. That waste is known as free radicals, which we probably have heard of.
Right.
Okay. So those free radicals are neutralized by antioxidants. They're neutralized because the antioxidant donates an electron to the free radical, which is missing one, and that keeps the free radical from damaging one of our own cells or DNA by stealing an electron from it. So if you work out, you're going to age faster unless you do something to counteract this increased production of free radicals, because that is what free radicals do. They age us. They rust our body, basically. When an apple turns brown, that's an example of free radicals doing their thing.
Wow.
If we sprinkle lemon juice on that apple and prevent it from turning brown, that's an example of antioxidants working.
Wow.
This is basic science.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's totally wild. So when we come back on our next segment, we're going to get a little deeper into this and some of the other components of it. But, I think this is a critical factor, and it's good to understand, why do we take vitamins?
All right, folks, you're listening to What About Nutrition? We'll come back with our second segment in just a moment. It's David Gall. He's Mr. Nutrition from O'Fallon Nutrition on Veterans Memorial Parkway over by Fort Zumwalt Park on the west end of O'Fallon off that North Service Road. We'll be right back on the program that's got everybody thinking about nutrition.